Alex Gaia Wood. She's a dedicated land steward. She's a gatherer of women, and she is the creative force and mother behind Origins Gathering.
We have been stripped from our humanness. So gathering, it's such an alternative way of thinking that it's the most natural thing that we can do as society, but it's so alternative now. What bridges need to be built? And maybe part of that is like a family gathering, and then that bridges off to this other thing of then maybe they feel comfortable enough to go to just the men's circle or just the women's circle. If we make those actions together, that is where small choices can have a huge impact. And as humanity, how do we return to humanity? How do we return to the earth so that we can teach our children practices before they go extinct?
Peace, family. In 2024, Sacred Sons is hosting events all around the globe. We are in the United States and Canada, Mexico, all across Europe, and this year coming to Australia, connecting men to their hearts, leading men to their purpose. Join us at an upcoming EMX for 4 days of connection, confrontation, celebration where brotherhood is the medicine and anything is possible. Coming up next, Sacred Sons is coming back to the East Coast of the United States. EMX Florida, Floral City, January 25th through 28th. After that, we're heading all the way to EMX Perth, Western Australia, February 8th through 11th. And then EMX in Kugel, Australia, February 15th through 18th. This one, I believe, is sold out. So Australia, join us in Perth, and then coming all the way back across the pond to one of my favorite locations, EMX, Tepoztlan, Mexico, February 29th through March 3rd. If you're one of our Spanish-speaking brothers, get to EMX in Tepoztlan, hosted by our brothers Manu and Yvonne. After that, EMX San Diego, California, March 7th through 10th. This one is led by Kale Kaale Kahi and Uncle Vince Matoska Chafin. EMX San Diego will be back at our home at Liberty Arising, followed by our Leadership Summit. Looking forward to seeing all of the Sacred Sons leadership back out at our home at Liberty Arising. After that, we're back in Texas, EMX North Zolch, Texas, May 2nd through 5th. For any of the Texas brothers who missed out on the previous EMX, now is your chance. And for the first time, we're going to be in Wales, UK, May 2nd through 5th. And EMX Brennan, Washington, bringing it all the way back home, May 9th through 12th. 2024 is lit. If you are interested, please go to sacredsons.com. Click on EMX, look at the dates, go to the event closest to you. At checkout, use the code, all caps, Brotherhood for 10% off. Claim your spot, and we will see you on the other side. Much love, fam. Grand Rising brothers and sisters, Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. Sacred Sons, how are we planting seeds for future generations to come? This is a question I feel at this time is necessary to have. And we know this is more than men's work. We know this is beyond the individual inner work that is necessary in this time. But what about when it comes back into sacred union? What about when the men and women converge together to plant those seeds? Yeah, to plant the seeds of trees which we know we will not live long enough to sit in their shade, to bear the fruit. Can we allow ourselves, can we give ourselves permission to work on that time scale again?
Cultivating our gardens. How do men and women come together and cultivate the gardens, not just for ourselves and our children, but our children's children, our next 7 generations and beyond? You know, how do we return to humanity? How do we return to the earth so that we can teach our children practices before they go extinct? Because robots are kind of cool sometimes, but I don't want to be a robot in the future or my kids' kids to be that. Like there needs to be a blend of technology and being human.
I think the answer is in the question. How do we return to the earth? By returning to the earth. So with that, our guest today, Alex Gaia Wood. She's a dedicated land steward. She's a gatherer of women, and she is the creative force and mother behind Origins Gathering. Please welcome Alex Gaia Wood.
Thank you, Adams. Thank you so much for having me here and with the Sacred Sons. This is the first podcast that I've done as Origins for Origins ever. Since its inception, I've been dedicated to the land and how to grow a gathering like this in harmony with the land. So this is exciting. I'm excited about our chat.
Same. I'm so excited. Hannah was stoked to know that I was having you on as a guest. She's so lit about Origins Gathering and wanting to come down. And I respect what you're creating so much. I feel like it's in alignment with what we're doing as Sacred Sons. We were speaking before. It's like, yes, we're doing the men's work and you're doing the women's work. And in those spaces, there are rites of passage that can really only be held by those energies. I know it to be true myself. I want to delve into those aspects in this conversation and really find what that is. Maybe in places that neither of us have really gone. So before we do that, I want to check in. And for this check-in, I want to ask each of us this question. When you were young, did you think you would be doing this women's work? Did you think you would be gathering women?
Absolutely not. No. I totally thought of myself as like a guy's girl. I played basketball. I thought girly things were girly and didn't ever think that would be my future until I got a very clear message from the land and she said, bring women here. And I was like, what does that mean? And reached out to like 8 friends and saw who stuck and what stuck and threw out some ideas. And I think that was 8 years ago, and how much what Origins has become. It's like part of my life work. And, I've started calling myself its mother, not its founder, because to me, it's my child and it's an organism of its own. It's its own being that takes on a different life every year with the women that gather there, because we can have a framework and a structure, but it's about who shows up. And so, no, I did not think about doing that when I was a kid.
Yeah. I mean, it was never a thought for me either. So I totally relate. But then when I look back, there are these little signs, you know what I mean? Like I've had brotherhood on sports teams in a band that I played in for a long time with my blood brother. Like brotherhood is actually a core essence of my being, right? And the first time I was invited to a men's circle, I said no. I was like, no way. And like honestly, and now here we are, right? Here we are organizing and gathering the people because sometimes spirit leads us in ways that we can't understand. And I got that same call. It's so interesting that you said that. That spirit told you specifically to bring people to this land. My messaging was similar. I was out in the desert here east of San Diego in Jacumba, California, in ceremony, and it was like, you are going to bring hundreds of men here. And and even at that time, my first thought was like, how is that possible? You know what I mean? And so how is all this possible? How is this possible for you? When did the journey of becoming a land steward really begin for you?
With cannabis.
Yes. Nice.
It's funny because looking back at like really early childhood, I was raised in Seattle and my family lived out in the country and like a couple hours north. And I always wanted to be out there at my grandparents. Like I always liked the space. Like the city always felt too confining. Um, but I followed my heart and followed a man into the cannabis fields of Northern California. And I think when I was like 21, 22, and that space, that freedom, like, and yeah, the rebel nature of what we were doing. And that was a huge part of it too. But the reason I loved it so much was because I got to be on land. It taught me how to, in a way, yeah, cannabis did teach me how to garden, but it also gave me an appreciation for where my other fruits and vegetables coming from, where's the other food coming from, or the flowers, or it taught me about like using organic sprays and not chemicals. And I had, known that a bit, but actually being there with the earth is a whole different experience.
When you say it taught you,
Mm-hmm.
this is the depth I'm talking about wanting to go into. How did it tell you? Like, and it's so cool because you can be out there blazing in the fields and you're like, hey, we should stop putting chemicals on these apples.
Right.
How are those messages coming through?
Being there day after day with the water, the sun, the elements. I joke with my husband, he's a very analytical thinker. Like he's really he's very intelligent, but in a very different way that my brain registers intelligence. And he would, when the plants needed something, I would always say, oh, the plants are asking for this. And it was like, not a clear voice in my head, but a feeling, an emotion, being with the plants in different ways or with the earth, like I could hear different things that they needed. And usually they were aligned.
Almost like being empathetic with them.
Yep. Plants communicate, we play them music and you can stick those probes on them and they have a whole symphony that they play and the different mushrooms and plants and everything. And when you tune into these spaces of slowing down, of being present, of not having an electronics on you and really just being one with nature, it does speak back to you. It's just, are you hearing your own chatter and what you think you want to hear, your own, that little voice that's going on in your head? Are you really opening up and catching those telepathic brainwaves from the plants, from the earth? And so, yeah, that's learning in that way, of the empathetic way. And then also just a lot of hard work. Like gardening is really labor intensive. Farmers work really hard and you can't really leave your crops, your sheep, home tenders or land stewards. Like it's a full-time job. And so I think that, yeah, getting into that industry and then all of the homesteading that came out of it and this need to be in space where I was surrounded by more plants than people became more of a non-negotiable than like, I want to do this. It's just, that's like how that's how I need to be for balance within my being.
Yeah. One of the things I find interesting, because I have come across many people and I have some friends that were in the grow industry. In California, we've been legal for so long, it feels like those days are long behind us, but really it's not. The black market's thriving out there.
7 years-ish from
I've heard so many like terrible stories of raids and it taking people in a bad way. It sounds like this was a positive experience largely.
We had some shit happen too.
Did you? Well, give me that story too, because I want that. If you have anything cool to share here, this would be the time.
Oh, I mean, rebel industry, like we were in it for over a decade. And so like, yeah, it's cool, like blazing in the fields and being with the plants and all of that. And also like, I don't know, in 2020, our property got raided. We're doing everything above board. Our county in Northern California had really lax gray area laws. Like for so long in California, different counties, you could grow medically or recreationally in some, and everyone had their different plant counts. And that year we had our best year ever. Our plants were looking so nice. We had two 72 plant gardens. Oh, they were beautiful. We were like, it was going to be a really good harvest year. It was COVID year. Like there were really bad fires that year. When was it? It was beginning of October, because it was just a couple weeks before harvest, very end of September, beginning of October. We got all of our plants chopped
Oh my gosh, on the raid.
on the raid, which I have my own suspicions of when plants are chopped right before harvest and are pristine and were chopped like with clippers and not with bulldozers and like very well cleaned up and like very well transported out. I'm like, oh, that's not getting burned. That's not going to some facility to just torch it and be done with it or bulldoze it into the earth. Like
It's being
we just got our
confiscated.
weed stolen. Like,
Dang.
and it's definitely going somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an industry that you could take risks and you could make money, and you were always taking a risk, even if you were doing things like above board to the degree that you could be at the time. There's a lot of, yeah, it's a tricky industry, black or white market.
But it's cool. I mean, for me, this really ties in gardening to stewardship, because stewardship is also that full-time energy, full plate. Like it's happening, and we're always a part of it. We're always listening. You kind of spoke to it, but what are the lessons that this prepared you for greater stewardship?
Lessons. That's a tricky one because it's like it's been so many, right, over the years. I think what's interesting about the raid didn't necessarily teach me anything about stewardship. If anything, it taught me like don't trust the local government necessarily.
Yeah, I don't mean specifically the raid, but like the entire journey of that, right?
The entire journey. Going big is not sustainable. Any kind of like monocropping is not sustainable.
Yes.
Trying to start a project where you are doing every piece yourself or with your partner is not sustainable. This village mentality of, well, and just earth stewardship, right? How to be an earth steward. And that's going back to generations before when that was you had to be an earth steward.
It was the way.
It was the way. And that was not done in one family group. There's multiple people that have multiple skills and different lands and different crops and different animals and different fibers. And, I'll fast forward a little bit because I clearly am not living in Northern California anymore. I'm living in Costa Rica. And one of I don't know if it's an aha moment or one of the biggest takeaways of being here and my a biggest gratitude and appreciation for the lands here in the community is because this area has never been industrialized, it didn't ever pick up a faster pace of life. So it's not about here, you have to slow down to be able to live on these lands. For Costa Rica to not kick you out and for you to be able to make it with the earth, because the earth is very, very alive here. It's very abundant and it's very slow. And there is community intact. There are farmers intact. You have to get things local because there isn't a shipping system that's reliable at all. And so, being here, I guess it was a transition from learning a lot in California and coming somewhere else. Not just for a fresh start, but also a start of, we were land stewards in California because cannabis got us into it. And it kind of came with the territory and we made it what it was. But when we moved to Costa Rica, we moved here choosing to put this part of our life first, to plant fruit trees, to plant those trees that we might never sit under the shade of. And we've got a lot of those growing. Really excited about those. But literally.
Yes.
Literally, that was the main, we've been in a rental for the last couple of years, and our last rental had, 100 fruit trees in the backyard that we're getting ready to put on our property. And Those were our priorities moving here, was what seeds are we collecting to grow the fruits for the future. And I also had my son down here. We had our first child. And so like, in terms of planting seeds, like parenthood is, whew, that's a huge shift.
When I introed you, I said you're the creative force and mother. And I found that with the birth of our children, creation comes along with it. And we get to choose as mothers and fathers and co-creators of these movements, of these gatherings, of these visions, to bring it into reality. Did you find that with the birth of your son came like creative energy that you are able to put into origins?
Yeah. I was terrified of becoming a mother. I thought it was going to mean that I like couldn't do origins anymore because I would be so busy with having a baby, and like it amplified everything. The creative power, I mean, throughout the pregnancy, but then, after his birth, and just it gives you a whole different not foundation, but it is a foundation. It's like a whole different reason for living and for doing this work in the world. Like we gathered as women in the mother's den was, the mother's den, it is not in quotes, but the mother's den was always a part of it. But it holds such a different relevance to me now, being a mother and having a child and seeing the kids and what they're able to experience at a young age. Like it's really powerful to be able to come into these groups as a child, and also, for mothers to feel a different kind of like support system. I know that my mom never had a postpartum doula or really had anyone that was sharing information and education in a way that made her feel supported. Like, it was just kind of something you did, and we're reclaiming that support for mothers, that mothering the mother, in little ways.
We're 2 weeks out from having our daughter Winona join us or here Earthside. And I was letting you know our postpartum doula is here. And there was a moment we had last week where we're bringing in some soup and the food and water, and Hannah's getting all of the attention and just soaking it in and letting a little sunlight into the room. And I'm just like, take this in for all the mothers who don't get this. For all those who couldn't have it, or for all those that have to rush back to whatever that is, right? Because it's to see and to be in that experience of course this is what's necessary, what's required,
and being able to experience it and advocate for it more. Like having family come and visit, but then having the priority be on the mother. Like everyone wants to see the cute, precious new baby. And in the very early stages, it's so much about the mother-baby bond. And like, mama's worked hard. She needs her feet rubbed. She needs all the food. She needs the liquids. She needs to just be supported in however she needs, and probably can't even coherently think about exactly what she needs. You just need to do it for her. And I don't think that like that kind of practice is actually really shared much in modern medicine world or in caretaking of the postpartum times. I think that's like definitely still practiced throughout the world, but it's a more ancient practice that needs to be revitalized, because there's also a hurt in our world. There's been a lot of trauma around births and families, and there's a lot of healing to start doing.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of fear around something that is so natural, something that this is how everyone got here, quite literally. And we have to hold on to that, because if you just look at the way things are going, they're willing to take that away from us too.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to reclaim these things, even as simple as, if you feel called to create that space for the home birth, reclaim the experience of birth, And on the other side of that, reclaiming death, I feel like is so powerful as well. How do we care for those who have moved on?
Yeah.
When you had your birth in Costa Rica, is there anything in that experience that you'd like to share from the birth of your son?
He took 42 weeks and 4 days before he was ready. He took his time in there, and we had a home birth and treated it like a ceremony. That was what you said about what our bodies can do, what women's bodies can do, and birth is one of the most natural things. That's what I told myself, is like, so many generations before me have had these babies. My body knows exactly what to do. I had a really incredible midwife that educated my husband and I both along the way and along the months leading up to the birth, which I think is really important for women to know, to like get ready to be able to trust their body in a way that, like, once you kind of start to understand the science of it, you're like, oh, whoa, my body's insanely smart. Like, how am I even creating this being? And it knows exactly what to do and how to do it. And being able to like settle and give trust to your body to do its work, and to not let your mind get in the way of what you know how to do without having to think about it. It's natural. And I will say, I was a pretty grumpy pregnant woman. Like, they're just, I don't know, having to share my body. I looked at it like that, and I said, I shared, I was fearful of becoming a mother. But the birth itself was incredible. The surrender into letting him choose when to come out, the patience it took to, luckily I was in Costa Rica. In the States, if you're past 42 weeks, you have to go to a hospital, even with like a midwife practitioner. Here, my midwife, we just kept checking. We let him do what he wanted to do naturally. And it was glorious. I really wanted to give birth out in nature, like by the river. And then the more pregnant I got, it was like, that sounds really uncomfortable. What if it's raining? Like, I kind of like these modern, like, amenities nearby. And we had a crazy storm that night, and the power went out. So I felt like I was having my like jungle birth that I wanted to, without power, just by candlelight. And yeah, my husband and I were in it together. He was my partner in all ways, and was there for me as a backrest or a footrest or whatever position I was in, and had the freedom to just move my body, let these contractions go. And yeah, he came out into his papa's arm. It was an amazing labor. I don't know. Yes, there were parts that kind of hurt. And also like, it was really empowering and connected to breath and connected in source. It's like the closest thinning of the veil. It's, this ride between birth and death. And it's, I think, one of the closest spaces that you can be in as a woman to the death portal. And the biggest surrender of trust. And you get through it, and then there's this beautiful little being. And it's like, yeah, looking at him and knowing that your body made every little piece of him, every fingernail, every limb, his heart, his organs, like, it completely changed me. Yeah. And this is coming from someone that, like, I guess why I want to say this again or reiterate, it wasn't that I was fearful of becoming mom. I didn't know if I wanted to. I didn't know if I wanted that responsibility, because it's a big responsibility. It's one of, I think, the biggest responsibilities that you can make as a human. Like, a choice you can make is bringing another human into this world.
Absolutely.
And caretaking them and showing them the way. And I'm so happy he chose us.
Because we're on the Sacred Sons podcast, I wanted to ask you, what is the role that your husband played? Or like, what is the role that you really appreciated? So imagine you're speaking to all these men who are tuning in,
In the
like
birth.
in the birth, but also in the maybe in those early days, or even for me, I'm in it. So like, what are the pieces that you really appreciated from him, or even some of the misses? Who knows?
I mean, I will say he was fantastic. He took it very seriously. You know, when I feel like he has like an analytical brain, like he likes to have things to study and to do. And so it was really great with our midwife because she gave him responsibilities. Like when the contractions started, he was timing the contractions. I wanted to be nowhere near a phone, but he had his little timer and he was timing them and he was there, but wasn't bringing that into my space. He was doing the messaging with the midwife and with the doula. Um, I had a very, like, only my parents, I think, were the ones getting updates of the birth. I kept it very private while I was in that portal. I felt very protective of just like the energies, and also because there's so much fear around birth, I didn't want someone else's fear on me. And so he was very respectful of like, he did the messaging. He messaged who I want. He listened to my needs and he did it. He got to my needs as best as he could. He did all the cooking in the beginning postpartum. I asked him to stay at home for the first 40 days so we could have the first 40 days home. Like there were like times that he could go do his computer things, but like I wanted him home and we didn't have family come visit until after the first 40 days. He went out and got the groceries. I didn't have to go anywhere with Zeph. And that was like, that was huge. I think that's the longest. I mean, that is the longest in our entire relationship of over 10 years that I have spent consecutive days with just him seeing no one else. Yeah, like, he, maybe talked to some other people or did his thing, but like in terms of being in the house, it was just us. And he left to California like immediately after the 40 days. Like, he had to resolve regular
Sure.
life, but like that was so incredibly bonding for him with our son, but also him with me. Like going through birth, your body doesn't just snap back like nothing happened. Like you birthed a human out of you. And there's like some aches and pains that come with it. There's like some honey that needs to get rubbed on you. There's like, different things that need to get checked to make sure that you're healing properly. Like it's a very intimate experience that it actually, I mean, made me wonder sometimes during the experience. Him and I have been together for like 10 years. So we're very comfortable with each other. And I felt so safe and secure with him. But I was like, oh man, what would it be like to, be in a brand new relationship and then get pregnant and have a baby? And like all of a sudden I don't know, just it's like you almost become caretaker.
Yeah.
And he became my caretaker. And I needed that. I needed that support. And it allowed me to, I don't know if you read like the first 40 days book.
Yes.
And so in that book and in some midwifery practices, it's suggested to like be horizontal for the first 2 weeks, I think. And then, be able to
stay in one room.
Stay in one room. I didn't read any books throughout the pregnancy, but that is the one, like, I didn't even read that book. I just knew about it from my friends. And that was the one practice that we put into place around the postpartum. And we just got to know each other as a family. He got to know me as a mom and I got to know him as a dad. And he was very soft with me. Like your brain changes when you go, like when you're in the postpartum.
Because Hannah reminded me recently, she's like, this is the largest hormonal shift of any human experience that can ever be had.
It's a big come down.
It's a big come down.
And the veil doesn't really, I felt the veil start to shift right around the 40 days. Like, and because I was so slow and in that space and able to take that time to do that, it was like all of a sudden, yeah, right around 40 days, this shift happened. And it was like my brain kind of came back online and I could think about things a little more. And it's so common now to just get rushed back into life. And But it's interesting what happens when you're able to give yourself, or when you choose to like really, this is a really big deal. I'm birthing a baby. Okay, I'm going to take this time for ourselves and our family. Um, you notice a lot as women, like we go to the ethers and come back. We go to the spirit world and come back with our child's soul in a sense. And so giving ourselves time to ground down and integrate that experience. Being a father, I think, is one of the most important roles that a man can partake on. And also like being a dedicated, loving partner to your woman during those postpartum times is so pivotal and important for your baby and your woman's ability to foster that connection, because it's so much newness in those first 40 days that if you're able to give everything you have to your woman, she can give everything she has to her child. And I think that's one of the steps that we have to start taking as humanity, to start healing people, healing the wound. Yeah, not traumatizing from an early age, not going too fast.
And this is where potentially this connects to the work, in the healing work. And sometimes when we bring people together, massive transformation is possible. Mass healing is possible. And I appreciate this piece around birth, because birth is the ceremony of ceremonies. I truly feel, after participating in 4 of them, that this is the thing that every ceremony is trying to get back to. That level of connection. You referred to the thinning of the veil, and it's simply connection to the all. Mm-hmm. And we attempt to recreate that with ceremonies.
One of the things my midwife says about birth is, I'm not gonna say it exactly how she says it, but it's about that birth has been made a medical practice, and it's not a medical practice. I don't know if she calls it a miracle or a natural way of life, but it is like the most natural thing our bodies can do.
How could it be a medical practice if it outdates medicine and the idea of medical practice? Think about it.
Exactly.
Just consider the obvious, everyone. If you're on the fence of whether this is possible to do this on your own, or but fear programming is that strong. It's so strong that it can convince you to be afraid of something that every single human survived and had to go through.
Like gathering, oh, you're gathering as women, like you're man haters or this or that, or like, what is that? How do you even do that? Like, oh, being in nature, like that's creepy. Like, that's literally what helped us survive as like the human race.
Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit previously. We're gathering as men. Men throughout time and history have gone out to hunt, have sought new lands, have explored oceans and beyond, and also have been providers, just in this way, and also like expressing the caretaking with that presence, with the structural aspects that your husband. What's your husband's name?
Kendall.
Shout out to Kendall, for holding it down. I mean, this is the work. This is the work that we all speak of, and Kendall is showing up for that. And in order for Kendall to be prepared, I imagine, him going off and doing work with other men has been, helpful, let's just say. And for the mothers and for the women to have those conversations and to be in that energy, I also see this as something that's natural. Is there anything you'd like to say on that piece?
There was the hunter-gatherer and men. It was interesting because we found out I was pregnant a month before we were moving to Costa Rica. Like, we didn't get pregnant and move to Costa Rica, or, it was, the decision was made, the plans were made, and all of a sudden we're about to bring a whole new life into the world. Um, and so when we came here, I stayed here. My body did not want to travel in the pregnancy. It didn't want to do the flights back and forth. And I think Kendall went back to California 5 times in the pregnancy or 6, flying back and forth. And like he went out and he hunted and he did things for his family. Like it was hard for him. He had to pack up our house without me. And I'm the organized one that just, packs all the boxes really well. Like that wasn't his forte. And so he made sacrifices to do things that our life needed of him to do that I wasn't able to do. And we found a balance in it. But that sacred union, it's not smooth sailing. Like there's friction and it's like re-navigating and just even on like the birth portal, so many people are so scared because of the fear, like the pushing of the fear around birth. They think so much about the fear programming. They think so much about that birth. The pregnancy months, the postpartum months, like there honestly is a lot more work involved in those months than there is in the birth. Like, yes, the birth is physically exerting and carries a lot of weight. Like it's a big, big moment. Like that's the pinnacle of that child's entrance into this world. But the bonding that you do with your partner in the pregnancy, how you start to navigate each other in those last months of it being just you two or with multiple children, like, it's the newness. That time is really important for the bonding. And then once that child comes, like that bonding needs to be strong because you're in the newborn phase again, like all of the sudden this extra time that you started to recreate or have.
And every time it's new, because now I got Johan's in the middle. Shout out to Johan Moon Jackson. It's his birthday today. It's his second birthday. Oh, it's so funny. All of our kids' birthdays are like really close
right
together.
Here.
They're 2 years apart. Shout out to Johan. He's having a really difficult time too. Because
he's not the baby anymore.
Now it's not just mom and dad in this sacred union. We're in the sacred family. And he's not the baby anymore, and he's weaned, and now he sleeps with dad, and the newborn baby's with mama. So it's not, it's funny. It's not shiny at all. We got maybe that one moment when we get the nice family pic is very shiny, but the rest of it is humbling.
Really messy.
It's very messy, but in the mess, there's something so unconditionally loving about it. I think you can't understand unconditional love unless it's messy. That's the whole point of unconditional love. It only matters when it gets real, when it gets messy. That's when unconditional love really, really matters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is like the ultimate test or the ultimate like, oh, I've learned the lesson of unconditional love like through this mess.
That's right. Oh. Wow. Mm-hmm. So, okay. I want to bring it back to the men and the women, the mothers and the fathers. I was doing this work around the same time. In 2015, I held a gathering called Tribe Family Gathering. Mm-hmm. And so this was 100 or so people, men, women, families out in the desert of Joshua Tree, California. And the big message that came out of that was that the men needed to get ready. Because at this gathering, we just kind of saw where we were at. The women knew what to do when it was time to circle up, when it was time to share, when it was time to speak. It was like the women were like there for it. And the men we had some remembering to do. And so thus Sacred Sons was born out of that. And now I feel, and what's happening, it's like we're at the time to bring it back together. And so what was the first gathering of women like for you? Like that, the very first one when it first came together?
It was such a mystery. And it was, for me personally, it was learning a lot from other women that were more familiar with those gathering spaces. I didn't go to a women's gathering and get inspired. It was that message from the earth, from spirit. And so I went in with a lot of like curiosity and coming in as a student, you know, my big thing was I was the land steward. And so it also involved like a lot of tools and water lines and propane lines and a lot like that first gathering was it was on my family land. So it was like a lot of logistics. But the portals that it opened up, it was the first time that I got to see the impact of what gathering with just women in a larger group does. And it's hard to even explain in words because it really is something to experience. All of the layers get shed, and it's not like when you get together with a few girlfriends or like even like in a women's circle of maybe like 20 women where you're there for a few hours and you go through a couple exercises and bond. But when you're just in nature and it's just you, like, it maybe takes a day. And then all of a sudden, like, layers just get shed. Everyone gets a little more comfortable with each other. Like, it gets really friendly in terms of like, you just start to see that human kindness come out. Not like so guarded, like, and then it just gets freeing. Like you feel liberated. You feel like you can go to whatever workshop you want, like say hi to whoever you want. And you don't like, there's no like, oh, are they going to say hi back to me? Or I don't know, like the fears I think that you go through maybe when you walk on like the sidewalk in a city or like you don't really look at other people in there. It's like by the end of it, you've probably made eye contact with every person there and you've experienced incredible growth. You've seen it, incredible growth on the collective experience. And it's, like for me, I don't really get to attend many of the workshops myself. I'm like, holding all the spaces and doing all the back end things. But seeing the women leave more filled up than they came, like really that concept of your cup is overflowing or like, you come in, is your cup half empty or half full, but like seeing the overflowing cups leaving and knowing that that is trickling out into their communities, into their families, into where they're going, like that's what it's all about. Like we need these spaces of initiation, of being able to come and be liberated in ourselves and fill our cups back up so that we can go back into the world because it's just the world these days isn't very sustainable. It's rare to get a week away from it all. I don't know if that's sacred since you guys don't have technology.
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah, like usually like Wi-Fi signal doesn't work or something. It's just you get a different side of people.
When we go out for our 4 or 5 day experiences, we're largely off technology, and then we have other things more like vision quests that are absolutely no technology. Yeah, I would just say Dr. Martin Shaw. I interviewed him. He expressed to me that it takes 4 days, and this is indigenous wisdom teaching, it takes 4 days to lose the sense of modernity. If you go out into nature for 4 days, you will come into contact with that original essence of who we are as humans in our place on this earth. I think we forget about that. Mm-hmm. Our place and our things, as much as we consume them, they can consume us.
We get so sidetracked by like what's really important, because there's so many things to distract us with.
Yeah, but when you get back under the stars, and so let me just ask you this too: why do you think those layers come off when it's just women? We were talking jokingly. There was a post that you made. It got a lot of negative feedback. I can't understand why people would push back in any way against women gathering when, again, women have been gathering for centuries, for millennia, for many reasons. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that that would be seen in some way as a bad thing. But,
Well, it was interesting because it was I think the line that was on the post that we asked is maybe what would you do or how would you feel if you didn't see a man for a week.
That's what was triggering.
And that's what was triggering. And that's what inspired like the comments that were like, oh, like you couldn't even build this gathering without men, or like just, or you're man haters, or it was people getting triggered thinking that by us saying not seeing a man, it means that men are bad, or it innately affects women in a detrimental way. And what happens when women get together with only women is oxytocin is produced. That's the, like, what is it? The love drug. It's what is produced during sex, food, newborns. Like, it's produced with a few things that are like pivotal parts of your life: when you eat, when you make love, and when you birth a baby. And women's biology produces that when it's just women. When like we get into a group and when the oxytocin is just building day after day, like, there's multiple facets of it. But one of the things that was really impactful, I've heard it from a few women over the years. They, after a couple of days of being there, day 3, they were like, oh my gosh, I can walk around at night and I don't need to look over my shoulder. Knowing that they were in a women's only space, knowing that however they wanted to dress, they could just dress and it was fine. Like, cause no one was looking at them. And not to say that like men ogle, some men do. It's in society, right? It's like when you are able to gather in a safe space that, after a couple of days, like I can be whoever I want to be, and that's okay. It just creates a different kind of container.
I would like to illuminate this, which I believe is a fact, but I think both men and women walk around in society with a baseline fear.
Yes.
I think it's known, or it's talked about more widely that, women are afraid in like city settings or whatever, like,
yep.
Going out at night. This is a reality of our society and culture. We're working really hard to shift that, by the way. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to express that it is also there's also a baseline fear in men of other men.
There's a lot of baseline fears. I had a mentor who we did different breath work and body work and NLP programming things together, and he had a analogy, maybe you've heard this one, but generations ago, maybe more hunter-gatherer phase of humanity, the fear was, oh, I see a tiger, I'm gonna hide behind this tree. Like, do I fight? Do I flight? Like, it was real dangers, real predators in nature. And so that's where that response system generates from, is protecting us, the want to live, to fight through something. Now in society, with how modernized things are, with the text, with like, a simple text can come through and you read it in the wrong tone and you're like, oh, or like getting on the road and driving and an angry driver passes you by, or it's like we deal with so many other people's energies and frequencies. There's a lot of anxiety and fear in experiences that aren't as tangible as if you saw a tiger in the jungle and you're like, oh shit, I have to hide, or, climb a tree. And our body registers it the same, though. Our muscles register it the same. And what an animal does in the wild when a predator is chasing after them and they get away and the predator's gone, they're safe, they shake everything out. They just shake it all out, they let it all out, and they do that until that energy is dissipated and it's gone. But as a human with your phone, you probably don't get into a little text thing with all this like anxiety and fear building over something that's, whatever it is you're going to fight over on the phone, and then get out and shake it out. And so we just have all of these things compiling on us in a daily life, in a weekly life, that our muscles are remembering, our body is remembering, but we maybe not be cognizant of how layered we're layering on the fears and the anxiety and all the things.
I don't even think we have to go as far back to say like, the original fear of like that tiger, that jaguar in the jungle. It's like, what about that warring tribe that was coming over the hill? Like, what is that trauma that's also stored in our DNA? But like humans are actually the most dangerous force on this planet to other humans at this time.
To other humans, to our Earth.
And that's in our DNA too. And what I want to say is we're rewiring that when we gather in the name of peace, in the name of oneness, in the name of like healing. Mm-hmm. I think we're reprogramming those layers.
Yeah.
Or shedding them fully.
Shedding them fully, reprogramming them. I was thinking, like, before we were jumping onto this talk about that aspect of how, these gatherings, like Sacred Sons, Origins, like this week-long or 5-day immersion, like, it's almost like a version of a medicine ceremony, right? Like,
yes.
When you go sit in a medicine ceremony, or when someone goes to sit in a medicine ceremony, you can go sit in that ceremony, but if you don't do the integration work and implement what you learned and take that time to like integrate it and initiate what what downloads or what you received through that, and you don't then put that into your daily life in some way, like the work isn't really done and it didn't stick. Like these gatherings are really powerful containers that we can have life expanding experiences. We can have our mind completely altered without drinking medicine, like just gathering with men or just gathering with women. Like, it's a portal.
Listen, I've sat in many ceremonies. It sounds like you have as well.
Just a few, not many.
and I've had other brothers, testify, if you will, that like these experiences are equally or sometimes more powerful than medicine experiences because they're shared experiences.
Yeah.
Because when you have those deep visualizations, when you have that big aha moment, it's largely in isolation. You're laying out, you're experiencing it. And then there's this sense of urgency to want to share that. Wow, I got this download, or even to journal it, to express it. When it's happening in ceremony at a gathering, like with what we're talking about, it's happening on a collective level. So we all get to share in it. We're all on the journey of that story. We all have the vision together. And there's something about that is so profound, so powerful. And like you said, the actual integration of those lessons, of the commitments that come through, whatever it is, they stick. They stick because we're experiencing it together.
We're experiencing it together and we're using more parts of our being to learn it, right? Like when you drink medicine and you're just laying out there in this altered state, you're not really using your hands and your bodies, but when you're gathered together for 5 days in community and you're using your hands and your body and your muscles and like, I don't remember what the teaching statistic is, but if you hear something, you retain so much of it. If you write something, you retain more. If you speak it, you retain more. Well, when you're living it, like how much of it do you retain then? When you're repeating it with others, when you're seeing it in others, and when you're, remembering these synapses, that's where the real change starts. When you have a community to lean on, when you come out of that space, shared experience is powerful, really powerful.
Yeah. And so, we're making our way this year in bringing this remembrance back together with the Sacred Union. I'm heading down to Costa Rica actually for Envision Festival, which is coming up. If you're coming to Envision in March, come see Sacred Sons. We have men's circles and some special events happening every day. And I think it's important that as men and women, that yes, we do the work on our own, but then what happens when we come and integrate it together? I've been a part of some incredible experiences. I was sharing about Tribe Family Gathering, which was also incredible, but I've been a part of some larger ceremonies where we're doing this from a sense of alignment. What happens when men and women can walk around and our babies and feel that sense of safety and that sense of awe together?
I think that's where
this is going. That's where this is going.
Yeah, it's funny because the word that comes to mind is like, that's the upgrade. But it's not an upgrade because we still need the men's and women's spaces, but creating one that we do come together and have those same essences of same feeling, that same safety, and being able to do it together and have both men and women stepping up to the circle and sharing and being a part of it, and having family classes, having kids classes, having ones that, everyone can do together, having some that are the men's circles or the women's circles within the sacred union gathering. Like, I think that's also where we learn the tools to not just do our own work and bring it back to our home, but that's also where our family can learn the tools to really do it together and then expand that to other families.
Yes, that's it. And to that comment of you wouldn't be able to do this without men, like, yes, men built this earth, but women birthed this earth. I mean, it's again, it's so simple. Oh, that's all you have to remember out there is like, yeah, like we couldn't do it without one another. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as
we need each other.
We need each other, and we need the time to prepare ourselves. I feel like it's obvious. And yeah, is there anything else that you want to say into the pushback? I think I love that you said that people are even afraid to gather with other humans anymore. Like, that's how deep this fear programming is going. Mm-hmm.
I had someone that I met the other day, random thing around cryptocurrency, right? So you think that cryptocurrency is like, oh, you're an out of the box thinker. And I was like, oh yeah. And if you want to come to the women's gathering, just like, let me know if you want to come to Origins. And she was like, I think that's a little too hippie for me. I'm like, right at the time I was like, okay. And then I thought about it. I was like, wow. So gathering, it's such a alternative way of thinking that, like, it's the most natural thing that we can do as society, but it's so alternative now. Like, it's just, yeah, it was just food for thought of like, okay, so this is maybe how a lot of people see it. Like, what bridges need to be built? And maybe part of that is like a family gathering, and then that bridges off to this other thing. Of then maybe they feel comfortable enough to go to just the men's circle or just the women's circle. Because I know, like, Kendall, my husband, when he went to Sacred Sons, it was because a huge part was because I was doing the women's circle, and he wanted a bridge to be able to connect with me more and to get kind of an understanding of what I was doing and what I was going through. But he knew that he could never be a part of the women's gathering. So he needed to find that elsewhere, and he found Sacred Sons. And it's given us so much more of an understanding of how to work together. It's given him more depth to understand, like, maybe not understand what I do, because, organizing Sacred Sons, it's a lot of moving parts.
To appreciate. And to have his own experience at that.
Yep. Yeah, it's I think it's necessary for us to come together as men and women, and maybe, Sacred Sons and Origins and a couple other groups that are doing this and create this space, because it takes the movers and shakers of the world to create the spaces right now. It's not trendy.
It's not. Yeah, that's what it's like we're selling something that's not necessarily popular, but it's so needed. But I have to say, I see things shifting the other way too, because there were people, I would say pre-COVID, who saw what I was doing, and like, oh my God, what's Adam doing in the desert? Who are these people? You know what I mean? Kind of energy, to now, like, those same people going like, hey, I think I need this. Or like, there's kind of like that the hippie idea is a funny one, but there's also for men, straight up, it's like, it becomes sexualized. That's gay. That's the homophobic essence comes out.
Women's get that too. No, is it a big orgy or like, oh yeah, oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, I mean, I have so many men over every year that have been like, can I put on a wig and come? Like, I want to see that. And I'm like, guys, just,
yeah. Well, this is going to be their opportunity. And not to put on the wig, but it's like, come as you are. All of you is welcome. We're here for you too, brother. We're here for you too, sister. Even the ones who have like the biggest resistance. And we know in this work, if you find yourself in resistance, really, of
that's something, the edge that you're hitting.
That's the edge. That's the calling. That's actually the moment to potentially lean in. And so, that's the invitation. That's cool. I feel like a similar energy, especially with the coordinating, the organizing, the holding of all. But also there's a what I really love to conjure is like finding those amazing ceremonialists, giving them a stage, finding those amazing speakers, or finding those leaders amongst us who really have those activating gifts to share and bringing it to the people. This fills me up.
Yeah. And I think, a big thing with that and moving forward with that vision, like what's been really true to me is keeping these village sizes of gathering, right? Like when you go above a couple hundred people or a few hundred people, like it starts to lose the feeling of safety that you actually get to drop in with who's there. And also like, I mean, I've had amazing experiences at festivals. I mean, Envision is, fun, and you can also hear so many incredible people. And I think that it's different, but, in a lot of ways, the big festivals aren't super sustainable. It's like
in super obvious ways. All you have to do is go to the festival at 8 a.m. on Monday, and you'll see how unsustainable and how much trash there is everywhere. even Envision, just to be real, Envision is like, wow, you get to see some of the, it's not about like the colonizer behavior, but it's like, dang, you do get to see the amount of waste, the way some of local community can be pushed out of those experiences. It's like we got more work to do. And if we can't get it right in the festival scene, we'll never get it right out in the world at large.
I don't know if it's possible in the bigger festival scenes, like with that many people gathered in a model that they're just coming for a week, and it's like bombarding a space for a week, and all of the work it takes from the local community to get ready for that influx of people. Like, I don't think there is actually a sustainable way to do the larger ones.
So what do you see working?
I see smaller ones working, a few hundred people, and it's like it's an intimate group in terms of in a gathering. It's not a festival. But that's enough people that you have some incredible speakers, you do some epic workshops, like you really get to dive into rewilding, to being in community, to bringing your family somewhere that feels really safe and supported. And it also, like with that size, you can do it in a sustainable way. Like once there's, the locations or wherever it is, then you have the gear that you get. Maybe the first year you do have to do some Amazon orders because somewhere like Costa Rica, it's really hard to get good quality things here. Like lighting or, like there's the random production things, but then you take care of those things. You store them properly. You make sure that things are ready to go for the next gathering in that space. And you tend to the land as a home for this gathering, as a space that these people and new friends can come back to year after year. And you do it in a way that you give the land a time to rest and recalibrate, and you don't put unnecessary wear and tear on its natural resources. And you find land stewards, land owners that have that common interest in the land protection. There's a lot of retreat centers that might look really cool, but they don't really take care of the land or the local people. And so just being really conscientious of the integrity that's held by those stewarding the land, because if you go and you gather in a space where that land is not being stewarded with integrity, that energy comes through very strongly when you have people gathered together, men, women, both, to share in these profound experiences or, workshops, anything that it opens us up. It's like another way of accessing the veil. And it's making sure that you do it with others that have the integrity as well.
Yeah. I'm really feeling the masculine energy within you. and the organization and the practical pieces that you're actually bringing through to hold this, because it's needed. And the feminine with the birth story and like, and with the gardening, you know, it's like to hold both of those, to hold the structural and to hold the garden, right? Like those are beautiful aspects of stewarding, that this land and this time calls from us.
Yeah, it's my my Kendall, my sweetie, and I did a week-long something course at Esalen some years back. And it was, I don't remember the exact title of it, but it was around like self-sovereignty, but in relationships, and how, and you know, it was a couples workshop, and it centered around masculine and feminine sovereignty within ourselves, and that accessing of like the masculine and feminine energies that we have in ourselves, that we have to balance in ourselves, and then meeting in relationship, and how if you're two in your masculine or two in your feminine, and same with your partner, and like how those energies can have friction and kind of bounce off each other. And yeah, really addressing in ourselves, like how do we balance? Because we do all have this masculine and feminine energy. And we can work with it really interestingly. Like I think birthing a child is probably, it's brought me closer to like my feminine side than I've ever been, and given me a whole different appreciation of just womanhood. Like, you know, I did a women's gathering and there were all these like workshops around it and all of that, but I always kind of resonated with, like, I like having tools in my hands and doing the work and the, like, making the spaces to hold these impactful things.
That's one of the interesting things of when we do get into our circles, is that for men, I see the feminine essence come out of them because there's not women watching in the same way. It's like maybe that bro is dancing and moving his hips in a way that he really normally wouldn't, you know, after day 2 or 3. And also expressing his truth in the same ways through his voice, through his actions and the way he shows up. And I think there's some magic to these gatherings, to exercising that essence within us. Mm-hmm. Right? You know,
absolutely.
I think that capability to go to those places is really special, and it's not really talked about. Like, how do we exercise those things?
And so much of it has to be experienced, you know, like podcast and hearing a talk is great. That's like a first step, but like getting your ticket, going somewhere that you need to go to access this in person, like, because you can't experience it over a computer screen or in a small group. Like the small group things are great. And also like, it's different when you're in a larger group of, you know, 50, 100, 150 people.
It is. What is the difference for, like, in your experience? What is the essence of that difference?
It brings in more walks of life. You know, it brings in like more interest. I guess I think like the easiest to digest analogy is, you know, that classic like high school cliques, like you walk into the cafeteria. I didn't actually like have the cafeteria like this, but you walk into the cafeteria and like there's all the different groups and cliques. You know, because you kind of like, there's different like groups of people or interest groups, and like, and when you come together in a space like Sacred Sons or Origins, like the kinds of people that come are coming from very different places and careers and interests, and because there's so many different facets to like the gatherings themselves, it's not one element drawing everyone in that's excited about this one element. It's multiple elements. So you get people drawn in that are really coming for different purposes and reasons, and like what calls to them. And so you're not just in a space where you, like, if you go to a women's circle for like a red tent ceremony, right? Around like your moon time, everyone's there for that reason. And so there's like a commonality of why you're there, but everyone's like kind of on the same wavelength. Like when you put yourself into an uncomfortable probably it's going to be uncomfortable at time, at least for us being in the, in the elements. There's things that come up that aren't the normal commodities of modern comfortable world. And you talk to people with different perspectives. And I'm not meaning like political polarizing things, like, because I think a lot of that stuff just should get left at the gate so we can really just tap into
it. Have you noticed that it does? Like, sometimes it'll be like weeks after an event and I'll be like, I have no idea what this bro does, because no one's asking you at these events, what do you do for a living? Like those typical small talk questions somehow do get checked at the door. Spirit's like, no entry for that.
Yep. And that's another thing. It's like spirit holds the grounds for these spaces. Like, yeah, there might be hard years or struggles, but like when you're finding like the paths that work as the organizers, like, and then spirit's like there for you, they're there at the gatherings too. And that's the part of like working with others with integrity, because these spaces are being protective, as not trendy as they are and as small as they are, and how much they're needed. But yeah, they give us access to more minds, more people, more like.
I think access to more is enough of a statement. I think that's it. It gives us access to more.
What's like the scientific thing when you have you're forming on hypotheses and you have a control group, and like depending on what you're doing, it has to be a certain number of people. Like it's kind of like that. Like there has to be enough people to give enough variety to change something. Ooh, and that's where these can be impactful, because like there's enough people that like we can make changes because there's more of us.
Yes, there's more of us, there's more to us, there's more to this life. Alex, if men or women are interested in knowing more about Origins Gathering, tell me or tell us where they can find you. And maybe, I don't know if the next one's coming up, I think the week right before Envision, yeah?
There's two in February 5th to 11th and 16th to 22nd. The best place for everything is the website, originsgathering.com. The website is maybe one of the most thorough websites that you would ever go to. It's like a deep dive into trying to put a digital footprint on a magical space that really, you can put as many words to it as you want and give the layout and the packing list and the things, but really show up, bring what's on the packing list. And like, that's the beginning of the work. As soon as you say yes, you've started the work. As soon as you've even looked at the URL and like, it's, but show up, for the women that are interested or the men that have women. Yeah.
Attendance is mandatory, folks.
It is. Being at the opening ceremony is mandatory. Being in this together is mandatory. Like, I think Sacred Sons does that too, where you guys don't really allow like ins and outs, or it's like you're there for the entire container. It's a closed, Origins is
every time
closed container.
I mean, this is what creates the safety that you were speaking to. And I think there's so much more to it, and we could speak on it all day, but you got a baby pulling your leg. I got to get back to my carpool, picking up boys from school and all this, but I resonate so much with where you're at. And I love the fact that as we're growing this and as we're bringing the words to it and putting the pictures and creating the reels that both trigger and attract, because it's not just, with our work, with your work, we have way more supporters than we do detractors. That is a fact. There's so many people supporting these missions. And I want to just say to you, thank you for answering your call from Spirit and for taking action, and for going beyond the thoughts, beyond the words, but actually like walking the walk. That's what's needed more than anything. Men, women, find your purpose and start walking.
And when you find friction, like, it doesn't just have to be bad. Like, that's why we got on this talk, because there was one of the reels that just had some crappy comments on it. And like, look at what magic we created out of it. Yeah.
Yes, and more magic to come. With that, Alex, is there any prayer, any message song, rap, freestyle you want to leave with the brothers and the sisters who are listening?
I would just end this with a reminder to step gently on the earth, to go barefoot, get your feet in the soil, like try and do it whenever you can, and just think about every other human is standing on the soil in some way. And how can we just reconnect to those parts of ourselves that are simple, are kind, are loving? Because if you connect into that love for yourself, for your family, for each other, it's a little easier to walk around this world right now. Yeah, just care for the earth, care for each other, and care for yourself so you can have your overflowing cup.
Let's fill some cups. You know what I mean? Let's get some more cups full out there.
Yeah.
Walk gently. Wow. Yeah, there's real alignment in the mission and in the work. So I look forward for what is to come, and for the unknown. So with that, Origins Gathering, Alex, Gaia Wood, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons, Wild Family. Peace.
Ciao.